Hello everyone, my name is Mike Butcher. My day job is editor-at-large for TechCrunch, which is a breaking news website about technology, venture capital, and innovation. And in my spare time, which I have none of, I have started a thing called Tech-Fugees, which is a non-profit dedicated to bridging the world of crazy technology entrepreneurs, engineers, designers, and the world of the NGOs trying to deal with refugee issues. I refuse to say the word refugee crisis, by the way. I think that I'm so sick of that phrase that I think we should think about other ways to talk about it. I'm going to introduce my panel very briefly. We have Sarah Crowe from UNICEF. I won't go through all of the job titles because it's all in your packs. We have John Edge here in the middle from the Whitechapel think tank, very much involved in the world of identity. And lastly, we have Christine Duhaime, who is with the Digital Finance Institute in Canada and has been writing about the issues to do with banking the unbanked and innovating around finance for people from worlds like that. So briefly, basically, we've only got 20 minutes, so we're going to rattle through this and make this as punchy as possible, and also give you some takeaways at the end about how you might be able to get involved and bring your various organizations to the issues. Firstly, Sarah, UNICEF obviously intimately involved with the issues and has all the numbers. What exactly is the scale of the situation at the moment?
He won't use the word crisis, so I'm completely
I don't want to.
dumb.
Let's just talk about the situation. So go for it.
All right. Well, I think what's interesting about humanitarian crises in general, and this particular crisis in particular, is that it has shrunk the space and distance between what we used to call beneficiaries and humanitarians. Mm-hmm. Because previously it would be this kind of concept of beneficiaries waiting for the porridge bowl of food to come to them. And now it's a much more engaged community. So what we've seen with the refugees and migrants who've been on the move.
When you say engaged, what do you mean?
Well, exactly this, that this crisis has shown to be probably the world's first technological humanitarian crisis in many ways, because everybody's armed with a cell phone, and that means that they are accessible and they can engage with humanitarians, and what is absolutely key is getting information.
But are they engaging with humanitarians? How are they doing that?
They are through WhatsApp, through Viber. Those are two of the areas in which they are. But it's been very different up until now to program and to support those on the move than it is for those who are now stranded. We've got 22,000 children who are currently stranded in Greece, and that was very different to a month 6 weeks ago.
I mean, the broad figures are 1 million who came to Europe last year, is it not right?
Last year, yes, that's right. So of those who are currently now stranded, 40% are children, which means it may be a crisis of conscience, and maybe a word you don't like, the refugee and migrant crisis, but it is a crisis for children because of the sheer numbers.
That's fair enough.
And that's what makes it different. And right now, 2/3 of those who are stuck there are women and children.
Yeah.
So 40+% children and 62% with women.
And I gather that the figures are tacking up with women and children, away from being males towards
exactly. So the beginning of last year was a lot of young men, and then we saw it increase from being 1 in 10 was a child mid-year last year, and then it went up to 1/3, and now it's more than 40% children.
The Turkey deal now means that many of them will be shipped back to Turkey, to camps in Turkey. We could talk at length about what a terrible idea that is. But what's the situation on the ground right now in terms of how you're dealing with this, how UNICEF is innovating, shall we say, around the issues?
Well, I mean, innovation is, of course, not just about technology and tools. It's also about using new ideas and using ways in which we can really advocate and lobby for children. So good news from last week was that the Greek government passed a law exempting children who are unaccompanied, pregnant women, children with disabilities, from these exceptional border closures. So that's a really good move, but this has been such an incredibly fast-moving and evolving crisis. We saw just yesterday a tear gas incident at the border between the former Yugoslav Republic and Greece.
UNICEF and the UNHCR have opted out of the deal with Turkey, have they not?
We've never been part of the deal. It's an EU deal.
But you have not. You've said you're not going to be involved in it. You're not going to.
Well, we have to pick up the pieces from as a humanitarian crisis. Yes.
Okay. Let me just bring in you, Christine. You said recently in the Globe and Mail that when the world banks terrorists, such as the Islamic State, but won't bank refugees, we should all agree that it's time for a new approach to financial regulation. What exactly did you mean by that?
Well, in my private practice life as a lawyer in AML and counter-terrorist financing, I think it's no secret that an organization like ISIS and al-Nusra and those ones, they have no issues getting banked, no issues finding financing. They continue to operate without kind of impediment on the financial sector.
I assume we're not talking about an organization here called ISIS Limited or something. Well, what exactly? I mean, how exactly are they being banked? Is this the Fonseca guys again? Up to their tricks?
I think part of it is we have, there is a culture of support for them, unfortunately. And I also think that they're very smart in terms of setting up beneficial ownership companies and moving money. And the banking system is not sophisticated enough in counter-terrorist financing. So unfortunately, what that means is while our AML laws, in fact, don't block those people out like they're supposed to, on the other side, those same AML laws don't allow us to bank refugees. So there's a bit of an inconsistency there. Why is it we put less effort into that than we do into banking refugees, and especially children? I mean, 22,000 children in Greece that I'm sure can't get a bank account because they're children.
But
and because
surely,
they're refugees.
a bank account is not going to solve all the problems. But how is financial inclusion going to at least alleviate some of the issues?
Well, my goodness, if they had access to financing or money of any type, they could pay rent. They wouldn't have to go into, the types of things that they do to get money is children actually are not going to school. The vast majority of refugees from the research we've done is that the children are actually going out to work to support the family because they're more able to work and more mobile than, let's say, their mother who has other young children. So we have a huge amount of child labor, and I think we should just call it what it is. It's child labor. It's inappropriate. It's unconscionable, and I think we need to say, look, the kids should be in school for God's sakes, or we will not be solving the terrorism crisis, because at the end of the day, they're going to be disenchanted, and they're going to look to something that gives them power and gives them money. And you know what? We need to get those kids in school and give them money to get them in school. I was in the
Bekaa Valley in Lebanon 2 weeks ago, actually thanks to UNICEF, and they have 1 million refugees in an agricultural area there, where the adults are not allowed to work, so they send their children out to pick garlic or whatever, and that's the way they subsist effectively, because they can't work, and therefore, so it's a completely informal economy. But the underlying issues are and interestingly, they do have smartphones. Smartphones are absolutely the thing. So there are ways and means of dealing with that. Do you really think that an app, as it were, could solve this?
I do. You know, it's really funny. I love this story. I met with some kids at UBC actually, talking about how do we put together a refugee app, and teenagers have great suggestions. And one of them was, why can't I just find a refugee, geolocate them with their picture, and if I want to send them $10, I can. And I think we need to kind of move towards that, where the average citizen, Joe Average, Jill Average, can send money to a refugee in need without having to go through organizations that may take 40% in administrative fees or whatever it is that they do. I think that the world is getting smaller, and we need to look at humanitarian aid person to person, and that's kind of the vision.
Okay, I want to come back to you about that, but John, with the Whitechapel Think Tank, you submitted information for the Bank of England's study into blockchain. You're very interested and very passionate about the issues around identity. You can't bank if you don't have an identity. What's the problem with the current identity structures at the moment?
So we, for human history, identity has been issued centrally. Only in the last 20, 30 years has that changed. There are 5 organizations in the world that issue 1 billion identities. Indian government, Chinese government, Google, Facebook, Microsoft. Now, the quality of the identity is a different conversation, but you have, for the first time ever, non-governmental organizations creating identities that people use in their everyday life. It is the issuance of central identity that's one of the inhibitors. So I'm on the beach, on the Mediterranean, Northern Africa, and somebody says, if you want to be a refugee, and my name's Aryan, and I'm 3 years old, you just need to show your legal documents because our immigration system will only accept you if you have a legal document. And I go, aside from the fact I'm 3, my dad's told me it's been blown up. Oh, well, but you still have to go and get it. But it's been blown up.
Yeah, exactly.
But you start, well, all right, well, I suppose I better get on this boat then. It's the fact that we are so governed in our mindset that identity is issued centrally. Yet we have these technologies that issue them in a distributed manner. The opportunity at hand is to say, because everybody does have a WhatsApp, does have a phone, is how do we make that, and it's a key statement for this panel and something that we focus on, is a legal identity, not a technical identity. And a legal identity has to be issued by somebody from a legal basis. So it's the intersect of technology and legality, but we do know that at massive scale, 3 organizations have done $1 billion. The World Bank estimates there's 1.5 billion people without a recognized legal identity. The incentive for people in the room who are in finance is the informal economy is $10 trillion a year, second only to the US GDP. So you've got this massive informal economy, 1.5 billion missing legal identities, Facebook with the technology.
With 3 billion, or nearly 3 billion.
Yeah. Facebook, Google, Microsoft.
Yeah.
So there is at-scale solution in there, and it comes back to there are intersects. So this Identity 2020, which is this charity that we created, is to create that intersect of technology and the UN. And I'll bring it on to the Reserve Bank of India created a banking license just for people with a small amount of cash. So there are these levers to pull.
So who is pulling the levers on financial inclusion then? Who's controlling that? Anyone?
So I'd say if you break it out, you've got policy and advocacy, which is something that the World Bank and the UN are historically super strong on. Then you've got emerging technology. And one of the key areas, and with your tech refugees, is how do the geeks or the genius engineers at MIT, UCL, University of Toronto, how do they intersect? So the overall, what we have is this emergence of a digitally enabled solution within a crisis, and how do we solve it?
So, given that one of I think the people in this world are very excited about the potential for financial technology and technology and finance generally, because whereas you can't scale chucking food out of the back of a Hercules transport plane, it's very hard to scale that solution. It's technically should be easy to scale finance and technology, and therefore solve lots of things very, very quickly if you can distribute that. But, you know, as William Gibson said, the future just happened, it's just not evenly distributed yet. And if we can distribute it for the future, then we're going to solve a lot of issues. But who's going to, you know, is the UN blocking this? Why is the UN not basically engaging with the banking system literally right now and saying, let's get these people banked, let's get them part of the economy, let's do this?
Well, I think John will tell you they are. But just to pick up on something that Christine said about that access to, that direct access where people want to help and they don't always see a need, they don't always see a way forward. They realize that there are all kinds of, you know, government issues in place, borders closed, but they want to feel part of the solution. So, and engaged with those that they want to help. But in order to do that now, when you have a stranded population who don't know whether they can go forward or go back or whatever, it is an opportunity now to access them, because through the inability to to travel and have a passport, if you have that group of people who have smartphones and can be accessed through various UN agencies and so on, I think you've got an opportunity to really change people's lives through blockchain technology and other open source.
So have you implemented blockchain technology?
No, not yet, because this has just happened literally in the past few weeks. This crisis is changing so fast that we have to move even faster with it.
How big is your innovation budget?
I've no idea, to be honest. I think we're probably the biggest. I think John knows more than I do on that. I think UNICEF's the biggest, but we're still small.
A better way of putting that question is the world of financial services, everybody's got an incubator. The budgets of all the banks' incubators will categorically be bigger than UNICEF's innovation budget. Definitely. It is how to bring those combinations.
Well, a non-governmental agency, that would probably be the case, right?
Yes. So the question is within there, how can you create that intersect? Because centralized innovation is fundamentally flawed to my mind when you're trying to solve these at-scale problems.
Well, I mean, half the conference has been talking about how corporates and banks can innovate internally, whereas actually, you know, hello, smell the coffee. Innovation is out there and in some back bedroom building the next technology. So,
I think I was just going to say, I think the reality, though, is most incubators, most big banks would want to help. I think they're looking for solutions, and they don't really know where to go to make that intersection, and I think our job is to help them to do that. And I think a big piece for us, anyway, is all of this tech and the, refugee-tech, whatever you want to call it, it's going to grind to a halt if we don't deal with the AML piece, because as soon as the regulator gets involved, they're going to say, look, there's an AML piece. How are you complying?
Well, in your stance is that some of the regulation is killing the innovation,
yes.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, for sure. And I think, when you look at we go back to the FATF, their recommendations, they came out with a more relaxed system in 2012 in terms of saying, look, AML needs to be risk-based approach. A place like Canada hasn't actually adopted that. So we have really prescriptive AML laws where you just follow the book. And a lot of other countries are like that. And so I think we need to go back and say, if it's a low risk, which the FATF allows us to look at, a jurisdiction, say, it's low risk, no AML actually applies. And so I think banks actually, in order to be more inclusive, need to go back and reassess what are the risks? If it actually is no risk, I'm not going to be fined if I bank this group of
Very
people.
quickly, where's the incentive for them to go back and reassess?
Money. We leave so much money on the table. They're crazy not to go after financial inclusion. It's in the billions a year.
Right, we're really literally running out of time, and it's such a shame because this is such an important issue at the moment. Are there any magic bullets? I'm going to presume there aren't, but where can we kind of get towards the things which are actually going to make a real difference?
I think banks need to have a financial inclusion department, which is very fundamentally important, and try to make a difference. And I think if every global bank and every little bank thought about financial inclusion as a way to make money, as a way to be socially responsible, we would see a difference, and we would get through some numbers on financial inclusion and fix that picture.
And what would be your ask of the people here?
Set up a financial inclusion department, change the world.
Right, how about you, John?
This concept of self-sovereign identity is critical for the 1%ers. So it's my data, I keep it. It's also critical for people in conflict zones because they need their own data and to keep it. So I would say that globally, every single financial services organization and government should be looking at self-sovereign identity. That is a potential magic bullet in the adoption of permitting every human to be able to store their digital assets themselves. That changes the entire narrative on AML and KYC.
How do people here engage with that?
ID 2020 be the first. The reason I work in a for-profit industry. I created it because there was nowhere to call. So Identity 2020 is the global default for a foundation where anybody in the world can call up and say, I'm interested in self-sovereign identity, how it can help my corporate, my refugees, these children at risk, and that's why we partnered with the UN on it.
And what's your final thing?
And briefly, I think it's just to engage on both sides. It can't just be a one-way stream in line with the new trend that is not talking about beneficiaries being somewhere over there, but they're also part of their own solutions.
Well, thank you. We really tried to squeeze as much as out of that, but thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.